Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really going to cut through the noise, get straight to what truly matters in American politics right now. We're looking at the surprising aftershocks of the 2024 U.S. presidential election, and crucially, what voters are demanding here in 2025. Think of this as your essential briefing, your shortcut, really, to understanding the shifting sands of American democracy, public opinion, and, well, the mood of the nation.
Absolutely. Our mission today is simple. Extract those key nuggets of knowledge from, all the data and reporting we've looked at. We want to connect the dots for you, maybe in ways you haven't seen, and show how voter sentiment is genuinely reshaping the U.S. political landscape right now. It's pretty striking how clear people are being.
Okay, so let's start by looking back, because we have to understand 2024 first. That U.S. presidential election, it really was unlike any other we've seen recently. Our deep dive showed it wasn't just one single thing. It was a powerful combination of factors, wasn't it?
It really was. You had that persistent economic uncertainty, the kind that touches every household.
Right. Inflation worries, cost of living.
Exactly. Then ongoing border security concerns, which just fueled intense debate constantly.
And the AI factor.
Yeah.
That emerging, sometimes frankly terrifying impact of AI on jobs, that felt new.
Definitely new in its prominence.
Yeah.
And layered on top of all that, this pervasive cultural divide. It wasn't healing, it seemed to be. If anything, widening.
And yet, despite all that division, the data revealed something astonishing. Record voter turnout.
Huge turnout.
Especially among young adults, those under 30, also women, particularly in suburban and urban areas, and a really significant boost from minority communities, too.
It was a noticeable shift from previous cycles, for sure.
But even with that surge, after all the campaigning, all the drama, the race itself was incredibly tight.
Razor thin. It ultimately came down to just a handful of those classic battleground states swinging the final outcome.
So the winner had a platform, right? Core promises were made.
Oh, absolutely. Very clear messages. Restoring economic stability was number one, investing responsibly in technology, acknowledging that AI issue, and making a real effort towards national unity.
But you mentioned earlier people weren't entirely satisfied.
Well, that's what our sources make clear. Despite the result, despite those promises, a really significant chunk of the electorate remained unsatisfied, maybe even alienated. And that underlying tension, that dissatisfaction, it really does set the stage for what we're seeing now, what people are demanding in 2025.
Right. So that incredible turnout, that lingering dissatisfaction, what were voters actually saying with those ballots? And how is that message echoing, maybe even getting louder now in 2025? It feels like American voters have made their expectations pretty clear this year. And these aren't just, political talking points anymore.
No, not at all. These are real, everyday concerns pushing to the forefront. If we connect the dots, voters are demanding action on 5 core issues right now. First, and it's still overwhelmingly number one, the economy and inflation.
Still, after all this time.
Still. Our research just highlights this persistent burden, rising prices for, well, everything, rent, groceries, gas. But what's crucial here, and this comes through strongly, is that voters aren't just complaining. They are explicitly rejecting what they call political games. They want real solutions.
They want to feel it in their wallets, basically.
Precisely. Tangible relief. Second big issue, jobs and AI automation. This is fascinating. There's a real palpable fear of job loss now. And it's not just the factory floor anymore. It's advancements like generative AI, chat GPT style tools. They're threatening white-collar jobs, creative roles.
Yeah, that hits a different nerve, doesn't it?
It really does. It's sparking anxiety among a much broader segment of the workforce. And it boils down to this fundamental question people are asking. Is AI going to help us adapt, or is it just going to replace us? People are looking for like a vision from leaders. How do we adapt to this, not just react when jobs disappear?
Okay, so economy, job SAI. What's third?
Third, and it's roared back into the spotlight, is healthcare access. We're seeing rising insurance costs again, hospital bills that can just cripple families.
And the burnout issue.
Yes, and notably, severe burnout among nurses, doctors, other frontline healthcare workers. It's hitting crisis levels in some areas. Voters want more than just small tweaks. They're looking for, tangible, systemic improvements, affordability and quality of care.
Got it. Number 4.
Number 4 is immigration and border security. Always complex, always divisive. Our sources show a real split. Voters are asking for a balanced policy, but what that means differs wildly. On one side, you have a large group who feel the border situation is, quote, out of control. They're worried about resources, security.
Right.
On the other hand, you have just as many people pushing strongly for more humane policies, addressing humanitarian concerns, finding pathways for legal immigration. It's a really tough spot for leaders because any move seems to alienate half the country.
A balancing act with no easy answers. And the fifth key demand.
And finally, number 5, education and student debt. This is where Gen Z in particular is really vocal. Our sources point to this deep frustration. High tuition fees, these crushing student loans, and there's this profound sense of betrayal, you could call it, over what they see as broken promises on debt forgiveness. It's fueling a demand for fundamental reform in higher ed financing.
Wow. Okay, so those 5 economy, jobs, AI, healthcare, immigration, education, debt, these are clearly not just abstract ideas floating around Washington.
Not at all.
These are pressing, tangible concerns. They're affecting millions of Americans directly, shaping their daily lives, their view of the future. Now, with these clear demands, it's still impossible to ignore that the U.S. remains, well, sharply divided. Our deep dive really hammered home that this deep cultural divide isn't just partisan politics. It feels more fundamental, like disagreements over the actual definition of American values.
That's a great way to put it.
And we still see those stark contrasts, right? Urban versus rural, red states versus blue states. And that significant generational gap seems to be widening too. Younger voices often pushing for very different things than older citizens.
It's a key insight, definitely.
Yeah.
And you can see how the major parties are responding to these divisions. They're sort of doubling down on their core messages. The Democratic Party, our sources show, is really focusing on economic equity, creating green jobs, framing that as a solution for both climate and the economy, and of course protecting reproductive rights.
Okay. And the Republicans?
The Republican Party is heavily emphasizing border security, pushing for broad deregulation to try and spur economic growth, and leaning into traditional values.
But what about the people who feel left out by both? That seems like a growing group.
It absolutely is. And
Yeah.
that's a really fascinating development we picked up on. The increasing traction of independent voters and potentially third parties. This is especially true among younger Americans. You hear it a lot, this profound sense of being overlooked, unheard by both major parties. So they're looking for alternatives.
And where do they find those alternatives? Social media must play a huge role here.
Undeniably. It's such a double-edged sword, isn't it? On one hand, it fuels divisions with its echo chambers, its algorithms, but on the other, it's an incredibly powerful platform for new movements, new ideas, for those independent voices trying to break through the noise.
That's where a lot of these alternative perspectives are gaining ground, finding an audience outside the mainstream media.
Exactly.
So looking ahead then, we've got these demands, these divisions, these new voices. What's next for this incredibly dynamic, maybe volatile political landscape? The 2026 midterm elections feel huge.
Absolutely critical. Will Congress shift power yet again? That's the big question.
And are we likely to see new kinds of candidates emerge, maybe people from outside that traditional political pipeline?
Well, analysts we looked at are increasingly saying the country is undeniably entering what they call an era of ideological realignment. Traditional political labels, old loyalties, they're being profoundly reshaped. What people genuinely seem to want from leaders goes beyond those simple Demrep labels now.
Like what? What are they asking for?
Our sources show a really clear demand for, well, basics almost. More transparency, less corruption, or even the perception of corruption, and real concrete action on issues hitting home. Things like affordable housing, a coherent strategy on climate change that makes sense economically, and ensuring digital safety. That's a big one now, too.
And looking even further out, say 2028, could that election look radically different? Our deep dive even suggested we might see serious candidates emerging from completely outside politics. Tech entrepreneurs, maybe, respected military leaders, social activists.
It's not just a possibility anymore. It feels like a growing expectation among some voters. They're looking for different kinds of leadership. The bottom line is America is clearly changing, and it's changing fast. The ground beneath the political establishment really feels like it's shifting.
You know, when you cut through all the analysis, all the polling data, and just listen to what everyday Americans are saying, regardless of their background, a really common message comes through. It's the most simple, but incredibly powerful. Our sources picked up on this real weariness. People saying things like, we just want honesty, we want stability, we want our leaders to actually care. It feels almost like a plea.
It does, precisely. Regardless of party, voters seem tired. Tired of the division, tired of the posturing, They clearly want solutions that genuinely impact their lives. They want results, not just slogans or endless cable news debates.
So, as we've explored today, the U.S. political landscape is shifting, and shifting profoundly here in 2025. The future of American democracy, it's being written right now, not just in Washington, D.C., but really in towns, in homes, in the collective voices across the entire country. So the question to leave you with is, what does all this mean for you, for the issues you care about? How will these shifts influence the world you live in? Definitely something to ponder as these changes continue to unfold.